So we have the official 53-man roster for the Eagles, as GM Howie Roseman never fails to disappoint, making a last-minute trade for an athletic freak of a tight end. Arryn Siposs is gone, so who will be the punter? Eli Ricks made it, Derek Barnett may not be traded after all, and Nick Sirianni sheds a little light on Nolan Smith's injury. So let's talk about it, but first, let's run it. What's up, guys? So the Eagles made several roster moves to get the squad down to 53 ahead of the deadline yesterday, most notably trading for Denver Broncos tight end Albert Okweugbunam. Sorry, I still can't pronounce his name right. Thankfully, That's Good Sports Brandon Perna was doing the Lord's work yesterday and shared the proper phonetics for the 25-year-old, Okweugbunam. I think I'll just stick with Albert O or Big Al.
Well, agree to disagree.
Okay, fine, but in case you're not completely familiar with this dude, he's a freak. Having played in the SEC with Missouri from 2016 to 2019, Big Al racked up 1,187 yards on 98 receptions for 23 touchdowns, showcasing some crazy ability, and ranking as the #1 tight end in terms of pure athleticism in the class by running a 4.49 40-yard dash at 6'5", 258 pounds, leaving NFL draft analyst Lance Zierlein to choose Mark Andrews as the tight end's NFL comparison. Or as Thomas Peterson pointed out, the new Eagles tight end's most similar athletic comparison is Travis Kelce, yet he was the 7th guy taken at that position in the 2020 draft, which, as you know by now, Alberto was selected by the Broncos, unfortunately not living up to his full potential. In large part due to the injuries he suffered by tearing his ACL in his rookie season and then came back the following year before experiencing some hamstring issues, followed by reportedly landing himself in former head coach Nathaniel Hackett's doghouse, only amassing a grand total of 54 catches, 546 yards, and 4 TDs in 3 seasons with Denver. Alright, not awesome numbers, and apparently according to Adam Schefter, the Broncos were actually going to just waive Big Alberto until GM Howie Roseman swooped in with essentially a swap of 6th round and 7th round picks in 2025. However, you might be thinking, why in the world did Howie give up anything for this dude? Well, it's because he sees the future like Perna, in that Albert's going to catch a touchdown pass for Philly in the Super Bowl. Calling it now. Plus, it's also worth pointing out that the big man had Drew Lock, who, yes, I know, was teammates with him in college, but I think we all know what Drew Lock has been in the NFL. And Teddy Bridgewater, as well as the shell of whatever the heck Russell Wilson was last season throwing to him. Honestly, that makes his 75.4 overall grade last year, ranking 8th out of 75 tight ends who played at least 250 snaps, super impressive, yet I wouldn't go running to add him to your fantasy team. Come on, we know Dallas Goedert is still the man, but I do think it's worth pointing out that Goedert is older now than Zach Ertz was at the time we drafted Goedert. Hold on, I'm not saying Goedert's getting replaced anytime soon or that Alberto is going to be a top 3 tight end in the league, but there is a ton of potential with this dude. All he needed was a change of scenery, so I love the signing, although Grant Calcaterra probably doesn't, with his days most likely being numbered. I guess it shouldn't be a terrible surprise since Adam Kaplan had said recently that the Eagles didn't just love what they'd seen from Calcaterra. Alright, I won't lie, I kind of thought that Calcaterra might be able to step up and show something this season, but it is looking more and more likely that his future is in jeopardy. However, at the time of this recording, he's still on the roster, so I guess you never know, but how are you guys feeling about this trade, and what are your expectations for Big Al? While we did have one trade happen, it looks like we can officially cross off Jonathan Taylor to the Eagles. Despite Philly sniffing around earlier, Adam Schefter shared that Indy didn't find what they felt was a fair value offer and will not be trading their all-pro running back. Okay, so it's not too surprising that Howie didn't land JT. That doesn't mean that he didn't sniff around or at least do his due diligence on him though. However, the ridiculous part was what the Colts wanted for him in return, apparently asking for a 1st-round pick. But with no trade materializing, Taylor is expected to remain on the physically unable to perform PUP list, making him ineligible to play for the first 4 games of the season.
That's a shame.
I mean, I kind of feel bad even though this is the team that celebrated by flexing over a preseason win against the Eagles. Pretty wild. Whatever, I do wish the best for Steichen and the Colts, but not exactly the recipe for success to not have your all-pro running back take some pressure off your rookie QB. Thankfully, we don't have those issues. We just don't have a punter. Alright, at least not right now anyway. But as Derek Gunn shared, the Birds will work out some punters to find a spot. Unfortunately, it doesn't sound like the punt god, Matt Araiza, is an option, with Gunn shooting down that notion pretty quickly. And despite other punters to be brought in, Thomas Peterson made a great point to look out for, since the Steelers kept both their guys in Braden Mann and Presley Harvin, and if you recall, the Eagles did put a waiver claim for Mann last year but didn't get him, and he was the 4th highest graded punter last year. So wouldn't be a surprise for Howie and the Pittsburgh GM Omar Khan to be having conversations right now. Although as Jeff McClain pointed out, the team may bring back Siposs if none of the tryouts work.
No! God, please, no!
Please no. I mean, honestly, I'm with John. If they can't find another punter, let's just never punt the ball. I don't know. Obviously, more time to figure something out, but I really hope we don't end up getting stuck with the unfortunate surprise of having Siposs come back. Surely you all agree. It was surprising to see some of the other cuts, though, like safety Kayvon Wallace, who many thought was having one of his better camps this preseason, even working out with the first team quite a bit. But obviously, defensive coordinator Sean Desai didn't think so, as the Birds are moving forward with 4 safeties in Reed Blankenship, Sidney Brown, Justin Evans, and Terrell Edmonds. One of the other somewhat surprising moves was that linebacker Nicholas Morrow was released. Despite leading the Chicago Bears in tackles last season, Morrow continued to lose playing time and practice time with the ones. And undrafted free agent Ben Van Sumeren was also cut, leaving the linebacker unit with only 3 guys in Nakobe Dean, Zach Cunningham, and Christian Ellis. Yet it's worth pointing out that according to Jake Rabati, since Nicholas Morrow is a vet, he's not subject to waivers and is free to sign with teams as soon as the move is made official. But the 28-year-old is reportedly interested to return on the practice squad, so a deal could be in the works. Philly also released every receiver not named A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Quez Watkins, and Olamide Zaccheaus, which means, as Brandon Deeg pointed out, the Eagles are rolling with 4 wide receivers and 3 linebackers. However, I think we all realize Howie's about to be very aggressive to add to those positions, even if Morrow ends up coming back on the PS. And yes, that does mean punt returner Britton Covey was released, so no idea who ends up getting the job. Although Sirianni did at least narrow it down.
You have 69 guys to choose from. Well, we're not going to pick Jordan Mailata or something like that.
Come on, Nick. Obviously, he just hasn't watched enough of Mailata's rugby tape to be convinced to give him a tryout at that spot. Okay, you're right. Protecting Jalen's blind side is probably a tiny bit more important. Realistically, I think it ends up being the Wizard of Oz back there catching punts, but I guess you never know. Trey Sermon was also an unfortunate casualty in the cut down, but unlike Morrow, I think it's very likely that by the time you're watching this, Sermon could be going to another team. Overall, it didn't really seem like there were that many shocking cuts, but the most exciting addition for me was UDFA Eli Ricks making the final roster and putting pen to paper saying Philly's about to get his all. Okay, this was one of the moves, if not the move, that a lot of you kept mentioning in the comments that the Birds needed to make, and I love to see it. This was the biggest win for the Eagles so far. Given Rick's ability and just flat out being a gamer, come on, we all realized with how he played in the preseason that he wasn't going to make it through waivers onto the practice squad. And thankfully, Howie did too, saying, you talk about pedigree, he was the #1 cornerback in the country coming out of high school and going to LSU. He obviously didn't have the last season that he wanted to, but we spent a lot of time on him in the draft process. His work ethic and care factor are really high. He's a great success story. As a guy who thought he'd be a high pick, he came in here with the right attitude, he kept working and kept improving, and as we tell all the young players, there ain't no scholarships in the NFL. You guys know already, but I think Pick 6 Ricks has a really bright future ahead of him, plus I share a birthday with him, so it makes it even better.
What is that? It is your birthday period. Statement of fact.
Okay, I'm a little more excited than that. Overall, Howie and the staff did a great job assembling the 53-man unit, and like I said, we're not even close to being done making moves. I just wish all of them could stay Eagles, but I wish them the best. And curious to know, who were your biggest wins and or losses that the Eagles have made so far? One of the moves that may not happen is Derek Barnett getting traded. Despite the recent reports of Mr. It's Always Him being allowed to seek a new team, and I guess become Mr. It's No Longer Him because he's not here. Except Howie may have alluded to a trade not happening after all.
I love having him here. That's why we bring him back, and that's a position for us. What you see with the 53-man roster, it's a priority, and so we're going to keep as many of those guys as we possibly can. Last year we got in a little bit of a bind and had to give up a pick and had to sign guys in the middle of the year, and so for us, having those guys lets us sleep a little bit better at night, and Derek's certainly one of those guys.
All right, so obviously, like we're all very well aware, Howie's going to hear every potential offer, but I think it's worth looking at the fact that, like Howie said, we're going to keep as many of those guys as we possibly can. Plus, given the thumb injury of Hassan Reddick, who should be fine and ready to go by week 1, by the way, but Reddick did say he'll have to wrap it up and get used to playing with some different technique. And then the what's up with Nolan Smith's non-injury injury?
We'll see. He's getting ready. He's working hard every day to rehab himself and get himself ready to go, and if he's ready to go, we'll play him. If he's not, then we won't. But we feel good that he's. I was going to do that. We feel good that he's on the right path, but we'll see. I don't want to set any unrealistic expectations for him.
That doesn't sound the best to me, and I talked about this more in my last video, but Smith's shoulder is not nothing. Hopefully he doesn't miss significant time, yet never a good thing to have a rookie miss playing time and practice due to an injury. But I'll say it again, we're going to be fine, and I think it definitely speaks to the depth on this squad, which is why Howie said this was the hardest cut day he and Nick Sirianni have ever had together from an emotional perspective, especially having to cut some players who have been contributors. But even with all the changes, Howie said the Birds roster is very fluid over the next 24 hours, and the front office is going to be as aggressive as possible. So buckle up, it's about to get really wild. Remember, live show tonight to break down all the latest roster moves and signings at 7 o'clock Eastern. This has been the Philly Special.